Nice to have everybody here. I'm Barbara Paxton. I'm the director of BoardStrong, and I'm joined off camera by Margaret Kiltz, who is our community outreach coordinator and technological expert. For those of you who are just meeting us, we are a nonprofit organization whose mission is to strengthen the governance of nonprofit boards of directors. So we provide nonprofit board recruitment, board training, board consultation. We have a board matching platform that matches candidates looking to serve on board with organizations looking for board members. Essentially, we think of ourselves as a one-stop shop for everything having to do with boards. This session will be recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording in the next few days. Please do feel free to use the chat box for any questions that you have during this discussion. We will have time at the end for questions. So here we go. Before we start, let's just thank our sponsor, Counsel Services Plus. They're an insurance solutions organization whose mission is to provide quality service, comprehensive coverage, and competitively priced insurance and employee benefits to nonprofits. So board members are the fiduciaries who must steer their organizations towards a sustainable future by adopting sound ethical, legal governance, and financial management policy, as well as making sure the nonprofit has adequate resources to advance its mission. The board's treasurer is critical to guiding the board in doing this. And today we are honored to be joined by a group of board treasurers who will share with us their insights and give us some guidance on the performance of this important role. Our moderator is Hume, who is the treasurer of our nonprofit BoardStrong and the Northeast Regional Director of your part-time controller. And our panelists are Eleanor Litwack, who's a partner at GRF, CPAs and Advisors, and treasurer of I Support the Girls. Michael Poe, who's the recent treasurer of the Tioga Arts Council, and Stephanie Woodward, who is the CEO of the Disability EmpowHer Network and treasurer of the New York State Independent Living Council. Over to you, Ellie.
All right, well, thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. I was going to have everybody introduce themselves, but thank you for doing that for us. So instead of a traditional introduction, I'd like you to share a little bit about why you joined the board that you're on, and maybe tell us like 2 seconds about the organization that you support. So as Barbara said, I'm a regional director with your part-time controller, and I have been supporting nonprofits in the financial management functions for my entire career. I don't want to tell you how many years that is because I personally don't want to admit how many years that is. But I am a first-time treasurer, and I chose to be part of BoardStrong because I really care deeply about board governance in the nonprofit space. And it took me a little while, but a couple years in, I sat on the finance committee, and then just this year took on the treasurer role because I know it's such a key, important role of any nonprofit board, and I wanted to provide more of my knowledge in that space. So hopefully we'll hear stories from each of you, and maybe they're a little bit different than mine. So let me start with Michael. Tell us a little bit about the organization that you're part of and why you joined the board and currently serve in the treasurer role.
Okay. Well, it's the Tioga Arts Council in Owego, New York. We were formed in 1972 and became a 501c3 in 1978. So the organization has been around a long time. I've been with it for about 8 years. And part of that was when I retired from Lockheed, we started to turn our farm and our barn into an art gallery. And it became obvious to me that it was a big role, and it was much easier when I started partnering with the Arts Council. And the more I learned about the Arts Council and what their mission was and how they interacted with the community, the more impressed I was. So started with my wife joined the board, I supported, and then I joined the board. And then as time went on, that inevitable question came up, would you want to be the treasurer? And so about 2.5, 3 years ago, I took on the role of the treasurer.
Okay, great. And how about you, Stephanie?
I'm Stephanie, and I serve on the New York State Independent Living Council, which is a nonprofit entity that conducts business that is required by federal law. So it's a little bit different in that we receive our money through our designated state entity, which is the vocational rehab for New York State. So it's a federal law that requires us to exist in order to create what we call the SPIL, which is the State Plan for Independent Living, which helps independent living centers across our state have one plan for the entire state of how we're going to help disabled people continue to live successfully in the community for a period of years. And then we recreate this state plan for independent living. So why I did this, I am a disabled person, proud disabled person, and CEO of an organization that promotes the independent living of people with disabilities. So I joined NYSILC for that reason. And I had a friend who was chair who was terming off and said, we really need a treasurer. It won't be that hard. You just got to check the quarterly reports. It is fine. Numbers terrify me. I just want to be very clear on that. I have dyscalculia. It's essentially when you look at numbers and they move themselves around. So I wanted to challenge myself by putting myself in a position where I would actually be in charge of numbers and have to figure out like, how can this work? And it turns out that it was not the easy job that was sold to me, but it was an incredible learning experience as we went through CEOs at NYSILC, and I had to deal with the uh, unmanaged part and had to step in to oversee the finances. So it's been an exciting ride.
All right, well, thank you. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about some of these other questions we're going to be asking today. And then Eleanor, please introduce yourself and the organization that you're supporting.
Hi, yes, so I'm Eleanor Litwack. As Barbara mentioned, I'm treasurer of an organization called I Support the Girls. What we do is donate bras and menstrual hygiene products to homeless women, survivors of domestic violence, and others that are in need. The way I got involved was when the organization launched 10 plus years ago. We're like in a teenager phase in terms of maturity, but it started as a mistake. My friend and neighbor made a Facebook post saying, "Hey, I'm gonna donate my used bra to a homeless shelter in the community. Does anyone have bras to donate?" So everybody started, "I'll drop it off tomorrow, I'll drop it off today." It picked up so much momentum that she started officially collecting bras and more bras and realizing how many women have like bras tucked in the back of their drawer that they don't wear and how many women need them. So long story short, it ended up going viral. And she started then getting money. So people would say, "Oh, I don't have any bras, but I love what you're doing. Here's a check for $100 or here." And when I saw that, me being a CPA, I'm like, "Hey, Dana, did you file for C3 status? Do you want to form a nonprofit?" So we started just like kind of dabbling in that. And I was helping along with the finances and the compliance, and our other friend was helping with legal. And then, by default, it was like, "Okay, you're the treasurer."
Right.
So
Well, you know it. You made a job for yourself.
yes, so that is how I got involved, and I've been on the board ever since in this role as treasurer.
Okay, great. Well, we all four of us have a little bit different stories, so I'm excited how that's going to play into the conversation today. Just to kind of go back to a couple things that Barbara said, in general, the treasurer role is oversight and with governance and financial stewardship, right? But I think we've all had a little bit different experience of what the job actually is. So can you, we all have different size of organizations. Maybe there's employees, maybe there aren't employees. So can you talk about the roles and responsibilities you each have as treasurer in the kind of realm of oversight and financial stewardship, and then what else you end up doing that you didn't think you would be doing? And I think, Michael, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, we're an organization that essentially we have one full-time person, our executive director, and we have an administrative assistant who's a retired CPA, been with us for 20-something years and works 10 hours a week. That's the entire organization. So the board, our interaction with the organization is fairly intimate. So as a treasurer, I went back to the bylaws when I saw that question. I said, well, that's really what I should be doing, right?
Right. What is it that you should be doing versus what are you doing?
Yeah, and if had I read this in the beginning, maybe I would have ran. Because, shall have custody of all monies and securities, shall keep regular books, shall receive current endowed funds, submit current financial reports at board of director meetings, and work with the finance committee, executive committee, and the executive director to prepare the annual budget. And in a way, yes, that is what the treasurer does. But more than likely, though, the administrative assistant who runs our QuickBooks, who pays all the checks, does the vast majority of this. My job as the treasurer was really to be working together with him to understand what he's doing, to translate that back to the board, specifically the board president, so that the board understands and can do their fiduciary responsibility, as well as to work with our executive director, who's all by herself there, as we develop budgets. And one of the things that will come up as we talk is that although we've been around for 50 years, we have had a tremendous growth in who we are and what we do over the last 7 or 8, and specifically over the last 3. So as the treasurer, it was probably very important to be involved in how do you manage this growth so the staff isn't changing.
Okay. I wrote down one of your jobs is to translate financials. We're going to revisit that. Okay. So put a pin in that for a second. I'm going to go to Eleanor now. Thinking about, if you have defined responsibilities, or you made them up along the way, maybe, and what exactly do you feel like you're doing that you didn't expect to be doing?
I think, yeah, we did make them up along the way. We do have articles and bylaws, but we don't have like a charter for each position or committees of the board. We're still like lean in that sense. So I mean, at the start of the role, I was doing everything. We didn't have a bookkeeper, we didn't have resources for a bookkeeper. As the role evolved and the organization grew, it became clear, like, although I do a great job with running accounting departments in my professional life, I am not doing a great job as the board volunteer, trying to reconcile bank accounts and keep the QuickBooks file up to date. So that transitioned into professional hands. And I think we would all agree, like, the main role of the treasurer is to ensure financial integrity. The difference is, like, how do we define that and what resources does the organization have? So at a bare minimum, it's, making sure assets are safeguarded, having internal controls, making sure the audits are clean and taxes done on time. But it's even expanded beyond that now to like cyber risk and fraud prevention, and other sorts of areas. So that's been interesting to see, like, the role evolve, not just at I Support the Girls, but in the nonprofit community at large.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Eleanor. Especially, and I know you and I see this every day in the work that we do for nonprofits. But I agree, the role evolves over time in the different phases of life of an organization, in the budget size of an organization. It could depend on how many employees, like in Michael's situation, how much you get involved with. So I appreciate that feedback. So Stephanie, you're kind of the oddball out here. You said you sort of got tricked a little bit into thinking this was an easy job and all you had to do was look over things. So tell me more about what you really got yourself into.
Absolutely. I will say that respect to Katie Carroll, who was our executive or our chair, she did not mean to bait and switch me. The job was traditionally more of that oversight where you review the quarterly reports. The way that New York State Independent Living Council works is it's a voucher based budget, which means we create a budget and submit it to the state, and it gets approved. And for us to be paid, we do the work and we submit a voucher to the state to receive our payments. The problem with anyone who's ever worked with a state in your life, you would know that states don't exactly pay their bills in a timely manner. So Well, that we were used to that system, we got into a place where when I was very pregnant with my triplets, our executive director also had major health complications and was not vouchering on time.
Mhm.
And I unfortunately missed 1 quarter because I had given birth to triplets. So when I came back, I was like, we didn't voucher on time, which means our 6 to 9 month window of when we get paid has just now been extended, and that is pretty serious. And with the executive director's health, the vouchers being behind meant that we were now going to be in a deficit. So
Mhm.
I had to start thinking creatively and look at, do we have enough savings that we can draw down in the meantime? How far can savings get you when you're waiting 9 months for a very big paycheck? Because we're working with about a $500,000 budget and 3 staff who need to get paid, in addition to all of the actual functions of the organization. So when savings were depleted, we had to look at options like, do we draw on a line of credit? Or do we take out a loan? Could we get a loan with a good interest rate or perhaps a delayed interest in order for us to be able to pay it back? So there was a lot of decision making to go into this, particularly as our executive director was not able to make those decisions when she was in and out with her health. Unfortunately, our executive director passed away. And
Mhm.
that meant I had to do a lot more working with our bookkeeper and making sure things were going. And that gave me the opportunity to bring in my skill set as a CEO of my own organization and say, why are we paying that much for phones? Like, have you heard of like cheaper alternatives? Google Voice does not charge that much. Why are we paying for this office if all of our staff have not gone back to the office since COVID? Could we go remote most of the time and rent a much smaller office space? Getting really creative with the ways that we were going to save money in order to just keep the lights on. And we were able to do that. And one of my favorite things about that was that when we were interviewing for a new executive director, I was able to really ask them a lot of in-depth questions of like, have you ever dealt with a deficit? What are your strategies? And if you're hiring someone who's never dealt with a deficit, man, that's a really good skill set to have. So I was delighted when we were able to hire an executive director who really felt confident, but not so confident that she still doesn't check in and say like, "Hey, I just want to make sure like, does this seem smooth to you?" So it's it's been more than what was expected, but now as my term is coming to an end, we are back in a stable place, and our next treasurer, fingers crossed, will only have to look at those quarterly vouchers and explain them to the council.
Okay, very interesting. So I heard from all of you that there's different stages when you have to maybe be a little bit more operational with the business, and then other stages where you might be a little bit more strategic, helping them make really like bigger answer bigger questions and make plans for the future. And I think that's true about any nonprofit. And then Eleanor, you said something about you don't have a job description or a charter for the role. And I can tell you from a BoardStrong perspective, we think that's a best practice that you do have, board members should treat their function, whether they're just, a general member or hold an office as a job, right? Even if it's a tiny part-time job, there are key responsibilities for each role. And the more that we're able to clearly identify and define what those are, it's easier for people to do their jobs, right? So Michael, you went back and you read the things you're supposed to be doing or what the role is, and you realize it's not quite exactly that because you have the internal support. So I encourage the folks that are listening today to think about what kind of job descriptions do you have for your board positions, and how does that get reviewed and updated regularly to what's actually happening. Treat being on the board just like any other business that you're a part of. So thank you for bringing that out, kind of in that in setting expectations conversation. I know we talked about oversight a little bit, and so what what does good financial oversight look like from your perspective on the board? And how do you get, the treasurer is often seen as the person who's responsible for the financials, ultimately, along with the executive leadership. But I think we know that it's really the board. The whole board has fiduciary responsibility of what's going on in the organization. So how do you get your full board engaged in understanding the financial picture of the organization and participate in the conversations that are necessary to make decisions? And who wants to start with that one?
Oh, this is Stephanie. I was really excited to get our full council involved with the finances, particularly in getting them to understand the deficit and what the choices were for that and making it very urgent. So as a finance committee, we meet for 30 minutes every month. When things got more intense, we met longer, but still once a month to keep things going. As a council, we met quarterly. When things started to be pretty dire with our finances, I would call urgent meetings virtually just to keep the entire council up to date. We also bring our Excel sheet for every quarter and go through it. And the Excel sheet has the quarter we're in and compare it to a quarter year to date, like where it should be, as well as the full year to date. And I will go column by column and also kind of break it down of like, all right, here's where I actually, like, if you're not going to pay attention to anything else, this is what I need you to pay attention to. This column right here is the one that I need you to look at and understand that negative doesn't always mean bad. Sometimes that means underspent. So, like, let's talk that through. And so I know that I'm not going to get everyone's attention if I just go through line by line. And I'm not also doing any good for them if I just hand them the sheet and say, what do you think? Do you approve? So I really try to pick and choose like, all right, here's what you're seeing here. And here's why this number is extra big and it might look alarming. It's because we moved offices. So we budgeted a lot of money and then we didn't have to pay a lot of money. And really breaking it down like that keeps them more engaged. And I try to add a little bit of humor to it. And at the end, I always ask them if they have any questions, comments, concerns, or compliments for the work that I've been doing. And that tends to at least keep them talking.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I could totally relate to like keeping it simple. There's so much complicated stuff going on with us, but the way Stephanie described it as like breaking it into digestible pieces. So for our like financial board review process, we do it quarterly. So we meet either monthly or now the meetings are less frequent, but at least on a quarterly basis, I will present the financials to the board, but I am looking monthly. And there's complicated stuff. I said earlier we're a lean organization, so our budget is like 1.5 million cash wise, but in terms of like operationally, we're more like a $15 million organization because we have 60 affiliates, 60 plus affiliates across the country that are volunteers. We have 2 physical warehouses, one in Maryland, one in Indiana. We have vehicles, and so all the in-kind goods. I mean, the numbers are in the millions. So there's a lot for me to sort of keep track of and raise flags or ideas or things that the organization might not notice where I have to not get too in the weeds, like the Google Voice example, but just look for those big things or anything I need to flag along the way to the board or the organization. And in terms of our vehicles, for anyone that likes feminine puns, our van is called the Vangina, and our bus is called the Bus T, but they're very cool if you look them up on social media. It's exciting when they drive by, it has our logos and pads and tampons on them, so they're very cool. But when I saw that, I was like, wait, is the insurance in place? Who's driving that? There's like so much else that comes along with the fun stuff that sometimes I need to be the party buster.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have to be the bring us back to reality person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. All right. How about you, Michael?
Well, we present to the board on a monthly basis because we really have so many different elements that fund us. Our operations are generally community funded through memberships, sponsorships. Our programs are done through grants. We have some programs we do that are providing a service, but also are expected to have a certain net profit from it. We don't do a lot of fundraising, but because we have so many things we're involved in, Our executive director is very keen on finances. She completely understands it, but translating that to the board so their head isn't spinning with all the things that are going on. Like you were saying, I like to break it down into here's the things that are going on. Here's why we have a $50,000 net positive this month, and it really doesn't mean anything great because we're going to spend that money next month. And so at the end of it, you try to look around, make sure which eyes aren't glazed over, and bring them to the point of this is what I care about this month. This is what we have to watch for that's going to be coming up in the next month. Because it's every month there's something new that's coming where we're expecting a certain amount of revenue. And when you're dealing with memberships, we've got about 270 people that every month we're approaching them, and you do the best you can on budgeting it, but you need the board to completely understand all these different pieces. And some people are better at others. And so mainly it's working between our executive director. The president of the board is key because the president of the board reinforces what both of us try to present. And being open to sit down with anybody off site, actually talk through what the financials are.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. So we all kind of said something similar here, or you all did. You have to know what's going on at a detailed level, but you also know that your whole audience of the board isn't going to be able to digest the financials in just reading financial statements, right? So you've each decided a different way to deliver the most important information they need to know. And that's going to change from month to month or quarter to quarter, whichever you're dealing with in terms of your reporting. And you might have to call emergency meetings, right? If the situation isn't looking so good and you need more input from the whole leadership team and the board and the strategy level on what to do next. So, but you don't make those decisions in a vacuum, right? You're working with the executive director. If you have some other financial professional within the organization, perhaps there's a CFO. And so can you talk to me and tell more of the story for our audience here about the relationship that you've had to build with whoever else is doing the day-to-day accounting, as well as the leadership of your organization, in order to be able to really translate the financials and figure out what the right story is that you need to help the board focus on?
Well, I'll start in with that. For us, it's our executive director, because she's everything from marketing to planning to execution to advertising to financials. So she completely understands it. So as the role as the treasurer, that's the key person. And she understands where the budget came from. And then our administrative assistant who does all the QuickBooks, so is learning the QuickBooks, but he's doing it. So there's two things. One, it's you're working with them to understand what this dynamic scenario is. But the other piece of it is I'm also the sounding board, because when she's in a staff of herself and executing a very diverse program, we've gone from a $90,000 a year business to over $200,000 in a matter of 3 years. We've gone from being a 990 EZ to a 990 to, oh my gosh, I got to do a independent financial review. And so it's key on that side, and it's difficult to that bridge which we've talked about between oversight and operations, and grabbing enough of that to go back into on the board side, sitting in the finance committee and getting everyone to understand almost to the same level. You at least got to present it, and then go into the parts that are important. But it's key. And I know one of the things I want to say, I am the previous board treasurer, and part of that was because of this bridge between doing too much and just doing the oversight. It finally came to the conclusion that I was doing so much inside operations that maybe it was best, in order to have that independent view, to step outside of the board and turn it over to someone who is coming in, who had the skills and the desire, but could be more of the oversight. So we've done this transition in the last couple of months where I'm becoming a volunteer in operations, and we have a very, very competent new person that's come on the board to do the treasurer, more of the oversight role.
Okay, so you saw that there was a need for a little bit of like separation of
Independence.
duties so that so someone else could function in more of an independent role at the board level because you were more in the weeds.
Well, we were actually getting to the point where there were a few comments being made that I was having too much influence in the operations, that the board wasn't. And I couldn't disagree with that, because
Okay.
because of the staff and what we were doing, I felt that was necessary. And to
Yeah.
address it, it was better that I step outside of the board and let someone come in as the treasurer, who will be a little bit more independent, but is very capable.
Yeah, that's so interesting because we do, as board members, have to acknowledge where our strengths are and what we're doing that plays into the rest of the board, and we have to maybe make some decisions on our own to be the one to step away without having to be asked to step away when there's maybe there's a conflict of some kind. So very interesting. Thank you, Michael. Eleanor, I know you have a unique relationship with the board that you're on because you were friends and neighbors. So how does that relationship work, and how has that evolved over time because your organization has grown so much?
It's a great question, and it's a big strength, but it also it's been hard for us to recruit more board members. So from that, like right now we have 6 people on the board, and from the original legacy board of those of us that were just helping out, 4 of us are there. So we have 2 newer board members who have been an amazing addition and a fresh set of eyes and like new expertise. But part of the nice part of having the same core 4 board members for 10 plus years is we have a really good rapport. You can imagine early on we were meeting monthly or even more frequently. And that adds up over the years. So when there's like points of tension or one of us needs to push back on something, we're all really tight knit. Our meetings are virtual, but we feel like, I don't want to say family. It's a very tight knit, like little group, and the executive director, who's all of our friend, coordinates it very well. And so it really helps when there's like something unpopular to say, or if maybe there's a disagreement or an issue. So that's been really nice.
Yeah. Well, I just want to, you say you have 6 board members now. Do you feel like that's a good number? Would you like to have more? Do you think would be too much to manage if there were more? I'm going to shift just a little bit on that because we hadn't planned to talk about kind of the size of the boards, but I think that plays a factor in how effective we are too.
Yeah, we would like to have more, and that's a pitch to work with BoardStrong as well.
Yes.
We would like to recruit more board members, and we feel that we need, some of us need to shuffle off, and some we just need more expertise for this like large infrastructure that we're running. Like I said, we've already, 10 years in, we've moved 45 million products. That's a huge number, and it's a huge undertaking. And we could really use the expertise of more board members also to tap into new funding sources. But I think it's short-sighted for organizations that are looking for board members just to bring in like a Rolodex of potential funders. There's so much other expertise that's needed, and everyone has to sort of play to their strengths. So like you might have one that's really good at operations, or the fundraising board member, the CPA, the lawyer. So if everybody's in there and pitching in their strengths, it should be really nice. But we all do try to fundraise as well. But oftentimes, like that's the only thing that's seen as we need more board members so we could raise more funds. And I think that's a mistake. It needs to be like a strategic addition and someone who's really invested in the program and the mission and understands how things work.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk more about the mission in a little bit, but I agree. I think there are organizations, especially larger ones, that kind of focus on the dollars. How much money can you bring to the table? Not, do you care about what we're doing? what other skill set do you bring to the conversation? Could you potentially serve on the finance committee? Are you interested in other aspects instead of just, being there in name only because you brought the most dollars to the table? So, I think there are probably a lot of organizations on here that can relate to that. And we do need more board members that can get more involved, right? And thank you for giving BoardStrong the plug on our matching platform. If you are looking for board members, we have a great resource in our matching platform for you to put yourself out there as an organization looking for members and hopefully match to other people who are interested in your mission. So Stephanie, just to kind of circle back to you on kind of the collaboration with the leadership team, what does that dynamic look like for you? You said you guys are pretty close. The executive director is doing a lot of the hands-on day-to-day, and now you've been able to step back a little bit. So let's talk a little bit more about the evolution of how that's gone for you.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting dynamic. So with our first executive director, like we started out really friendly and things were going well. As her health was declining, I had to figure out how to balance like I need these reports and also I need you to take care of yourself. And it was a really weird dynamic to try to care about the organization and also not get what I need while caring about the person. And I formed a lot of strong relationships with our executive committee because our council is 26 people, and that is a lot of people. Six people is not, but 26 is maybe too many. But that is what's required by the state. So our executive committee is 5 people. It was really good to be able to brainstorm with them, run ideas. Then I had to work a lot with the bookkeeper directly at points and get to know her. And so when we got the new executive director, I wanted to have a really strong relationship with her and very clearly tell her that if I never receive another email from the bookkeeper again, I will be so okay with that. Please, like, it's too much to do the day to day, and that's not what a treasurer should be doing. So I was like, listen, as executive director, I fully trust you. It is your role to do that. Just send me the report once a quarter. For the love of God, please do not send me weekly reports anymore. But now I'm working with the entire council to really help them to establish trust with this new executive director because since we were in a deficit, which we are no longer in, there is that fear, and I don't want her to have to bear the burden of the fears of the past, particularly since she didn't cause it, and she has helped us to come from that. So really having relationships that I can assertively say to someone, that's not our place. You do not get to say what the credit card can pay for. Like if it goes a certain dollar amount above, we get a say. But our bylaws are very clear that our executive director can spend what they need to spend as long as it's within the budget. And if it's above a certain threshold, we'll check in. But I don't care if they choose kitty post-its or yellow post-its. Just don't care. So it's been a lot of really direct communication
Okay.
and trust building.
Yeah. Yeah. I think any board member, especially in a key role like the treasurer or any part of the executive committee, needs to have a good, strong, trusting relationship with the executive director of the organization, and that there's clear communication across the functions, right? Day-to-day operations versus oversight and maybe strategic guidance, but we all have to kind of know where to draw the line a little bit. And I appreciate that especially Michael and Stephanie talked to, like where you had to draw the line and when you needed to know that, I don't need to communicate with the bookkeeper every day or every week, right? That's too much in the weeds. So, I think there's a lot of folks out there who shy away from potentially being a treasurer because of the financial risks involved in the nonprofit world. And, there's a lot going on that we think about from day to day, but how do you get comfortable with the risks because you're not in the weeds every day? You don't know every accounting thing that's happening. As a CPA, you think about when it comes time to audit, are we going to be audit ready? Are we going to clear our audit? Are we doing everything right? Are we sure there's no fraud? All of those things. So how do you make sure that you're comfortable playing the risk oversight role at your organization?
You don't. I mean, it's always going to come with some level of risk, and you have to be willing to accept it. There's no organization that's going to be perfect. I'm going to miss things. Luckily, this is like I work with nonprofits day in and day out, so I kind of know what to look for, but I do miss things. And it comes down very much to, like you said, the job description thing. I can give a story. A couple years ago, we never did the annual budget. It was like 5 years ago. January came along, and someone internally emailed the board who was usually responsible for the budget and said, "Hey, I have a funder asking for the budget." And we're like, "Oops." But what happened there was a lack of ownership and like charters and job descriptions, like you mentioned earlier, Ellie. We had the internal operations person. It may have been on her plate. We have the executive director. We have me as treasurer. We had the board member who did the budget last year, and I think we all just sort of thought that the other group would coordinate it, and it just never happened because no one was focused on it. So we learned a big lesson there, and we scrambled to get it together, and everything worked out. But it's just an example of like you will have failures. There is risk involved, but this is what needs to be done for these nonprofits to do what they do. Like someone has to be willing to take that risk.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, and some of it has to do too, the relationships. You know, for our board to look and see the vast things that we're doing is knowing who our executive director is and the highest amount of respect for her, knowing our administrative assistant who's, you know, Don's was a CPA in the city years ago, and he's been with us for 22 years. So a certain amount of it is relationships and trusting the people you're with, and knowing that our mission is good. We feel very comfortable with all the people that are on the board. And I do dive into the data.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just say we have a saying, it's trust but verify, right? And trust is not an internal control. So as much as we want to believe that everybody in the nonprofit space is doing the right thing, wants to do the right thing, occasionally bad things happen. And if we have the right internal controls in place, we can mitigate the risk, right? And that's maybe where the board treasurer can step in and say, well, what are our internal controls? Can you walk me through them so that we get comfortable with how are we ensuring that the organization has the right checks and balances before it gets to the board level of having to provide like really deep in the weeds oversight?
I think it's also about leaning on your auditors, by the way. Like audits have traditionally been seen as like a burden and a transactional thing that you need to do to comply, those of you who are big enough for audits. But you should really partner with your auditors to understand like what they're seeing across other nonprofits. They did a deep dive into your internal controls and your workflows. So even if they're giving like a clean board letter, which is great, there's always more to dig in if you really partner with them and talk to them and keep in touch with them through the year. Like they looked so closely at your organization. And I know like my audit colleagues always say like they would like their organizations to partner with them more and not see it as just like checking the box, they're in and they're out. So that's
Yeah.
just one tip, is to lean more on your auditors for this type of support as well.
Yeah.
I want to jump back to this idea of becoming comfortable with the risk of being treasurer. I don't think there is any reason to become comfortable with that risk because the risk is the same as if you were any other board member. Your
Mhm.
fiduciary duty does not change. You do not become the only person responsible when you become the treasurer. So for me, it is more about, am I comfortable on being the board, period. It's not an organization that I would serve on the board, then it's not something I would serve on as a treasurer because I'm not on your board. But me becoming your treasurer doesn't change anything. Every other person is just as responsible as I am. So when I join a board, first I want to look, do I believe in this organization? Do I trust the leadership of this organization. Do they have directors and officers insurance just in case?
Yeah.
That's a really important one for me. As a lawyer, I will not be on any board if there's no directors and officers insurance involved. But after that, I love looking at internal controls and seeing how we could improve. But I don't think anyone should fear or shy away from becoming the treasurer of an organization. If you're already serving on that board, you already are responsible.
Yeah. So that answers, there's a question in the Q&A. How important is it to have a board member with financial management expertise? Right? I mean, I think every board should have at least one financial management minded person. Doesn't have to be the treasurer, though. They have to be somebody who's willing to jump in, understand the numbers. Like you said, Stephanie, that was not your thing, but you were willing to dig in and be challenged by that and learn along the way. And I think as long as we keep educating and making sure that all board members understand that it's everyone's responsibility to be good stewards of the financial resources, I think we're all on the right track. So I know we want to there are a couple questions, but real quick, one thing I want to know from each of you, even though the job is hard as a treasurer, right? Maybe a little bit more than you thought you were getting yourself into. Why did you choose to do it? And what keeps you doing it? In Michael's case, he gave it up, but what has kept you engaged in this function?
I love the learning of it. Like, as Eleanor said, like, we're gonna make mistakes, but like, I'm learning so much and being better as a treasurer along the way, but it's also making me a better CEO of my own organization. I have realized that my dyscalculia and like not being able to like do numbers, Excel sheets can fix that. As long as you type the right numbers in the Excel sheet, you really don't have to be like a math wizard. You just have to check the formulas. Like, that's amazing. But I also realized that because I struggled with numbers, I have been oh so conservative with my spending. And I was like, oh, like we don't actually have to have that much in the bank in order to sustain our operations. So we've been on my organization side, been able to expand our programs because I've seen how another organization runs their books and responsible ways to spend that I'm like, oh, we can loosen those belts just a little bit and do more for our community. So I think it's been really fulfilling for me individually and really great for the organization as well. It's been a really great symbiotic relationship.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, and for me, it's about the mission. So we have such a human mission. It's so hands-on. I don't often get to go to the warehouses and pack things or deliver them to the shelters and the women that need them, but I have done that. I do it probably once a year or so. And you just remember what it all comes down to. Like, forget about all the junk going on with the accounting and any finance issue that we're having or audit issues. Like, we're getting bras to women that need them. And so for me, it always comes down to that. I know early in my career, we had a joke around the office, like, we're all going to be asked to be on nonprofit boards. Just don't be the treasurer. That's a sucker's gig. And it's a silly piece of advice because what's missing from that sentence is, but there's a way that you could give back like, these organizations need our financial expertise so much. And if they're not hiring us professionally, like, the least we could do is help get bras to women in need by doing the accounting or giving like the CPA expertise. So that's what keeps me going and empowers me because it is work and it is a risk, but I do it for the mission.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now I would say the same is it's the mission. It truly is because we're more than art shows and exhibits. We have the Beyond the Gallery where we actually go into the community. We bring art projects to meal sites so that kids can come and not feel stigmatized. We work with other NGOs to go into transitional housing for men and women. And we go to Memory Maker, go into nursing homes. And those types of things are why I stay with the organization.
Mhm.
Being involved in treasure is just, it's a control thing. I loved understanding exactly what's happening and working to be able to expand the reach that we have directly with the executive director and the board. So
Yeah.
for me, being in the treasurer is just, as I said, I moved out, but it's it's the best place to actually see what this organization is and be able to have an impact on it.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for your time. We do have some questions in the chat that I'm going to dig out here a little bit to the best that I can. One person asked if any of us have full-time jobs, and how do we juggle that with our board duties? And I know for sure 3 of us have full-time jobs here. Anybody want to take that one? How do you juggle?
It's a challenge. But I try to treat it like a client, honestly. So yes, the organization needs something, and yes, I'm a volunteer, but I try to prioritize it. It doesn't always work because I know like if a client's asking me for something and the volunteer gig, but I try to prioritize it. Also, just the way you juggle anything. Like there are some things that are actually fire drills, and there are some things that can wait. So it's like setting expectations, and if I can't help, I'm at least giving the resources to find someone that can help. So that's how I go about it.
Great point. I'm in a similar boat, right? Barbara sends me things and I might not respond as timely to certain things as she might like. But I get to it at night and on the weekends typically, and then she sees it on Monday morning when she needs something from me. So thank you for answering that. Somebody asked about how often our boards meet. I think there was a mixture here. Some are monthly. BoardStrong is quarterly, but I don't hate the idea of meeting with the CFO on a monthly basis. So Barbara, maybe give Michelle a heads up that I might be asking to meet with her more frequently. So what else do we have in here? Your board duties helped enhance your personal and career development. Yes, everybody's kind of shaking their head.
Yeah, we're learning new skill. I don't want to speak for everyone, but like we're learning new skills that allows us to be better in our own careers, but also the networking, meeting new people has really been beneficial to my career. I work with people with disabilities because of my work on this board. I have been appointed to serve on the State Rehab Council, which advises vocational rehabilitation. So advises the state entity that helps disabled people get jobs. So it's been a really cool to be able to expand my network because I'm serving.
Yeah, and I know for me it helps me see the other perspective. So professionally, we run the accounting departments and technology implementations for nonprofits, and we're usually reporting to the ED or to boards. As a board member, I get to see what boards talk about and what they might be thinking of. So it gives me an opportunity to see things from the board perspective, and it certainly helps me professionally. And that's why we also recommend for all our colleagues to get board positions with nonprofits as well.
Yeah.
And I'm unique in that I'm retired, but it's still, for me, it helps in terms of the involvement in the community because of the multiple groups that we work with. I mean, I would say 90% of the people I know now because of what I've done with the board. And it's a big quality of life.
Yeah. I think there's boards need a mixture of people who are in the working world and some who are retired, and it's going to balance out who can do what when, and really share in what needs to be done in order to make your organization successful. So I'm glad that we have a mix today for this conversation. There are quite a few more questions. Barbara, do you want to call any out specifically that you feel are key to this discussion today?
Well, there is a question about if anybody has adopted any AI strategies or is using AI in any way. I think we see that a lot of nonprofits aren't because they're kind of scared of it. And I wondered if any of you had dabbled in it at all.
Girl, AI is my best friend. As a lawyer, as a CEO, as a treasurer, AI I'm not running like our books through it, but when we are looking at credit card usage policies, should we update that? I will go straight in and say, give me examples of 5 other nonprofits of this size. What are the credit card usage policies. It'll be easier than me like going through Google, trying to find them. It'll pull them up and I get to pull out the language that I like. I get to also judge some of them. I'm like, ooh, you should have run that policy by somebody. But it's helpful to see. I'm the type of person who likes to work off of examples, and I firmly believe, why would I recreate the wheel? If something good already exists, like let's make that work for our organization. So I love AI. I think you need to train your AI to really understand your perspective and what you want, because if you don't put in the right prompts, you're going to get terrible outcomes. But if your AI is attuned to your voice, understands what you're trying to accomplish, it really can produce results so much faster.
Yeah, and Barbara, this would be a great BoardStrong session for at least an hour. But AI has so many ups and downs and scare factor and what's going to happen to the workforce. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing with where AI is right now, there are immense productivity gains, and all of us are stretched thin. Like we could all use extra time in our day. And if used responsibly, like it could really shed hours and hours off your day. So that's my little plug, but I'm happy to do a separate session on it.
Awesome. I think you just volunteered to be part of something else. BoardStrong is looking for new board members also. We're growing our board just like many of the organizations here too. So if you have an interest in that, please reach out to Barbara. I will give one more great plug for our matching platform for the organizations here that are seeking new board members potentially with financial management expertise. That is a great resource to seek. Look at our website, check out how your organization can set up a profile, and then how you can start getting matched to people who want to be on boards just like yours. So we're at the top of the hour. Barbara, what else do we need to say to close this out? Thank you for all the questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. I'm available on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to reach out to me or send questions to Barbara, I can support answering those as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Our contact information is on in the chat, and thank you to our panelists. I couldn't leave without doing one quick plug. We have a webinar for your board members who don't understand finances at all, because as been pointed out here, everybody is fiduciarily responsible for the organization. So if you have board members who struggle, we have this available for people. But thank you all so much for doing this. This has been really wonderful and educational. And everybody enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with all three of you today. Thank you for bringing your expertise to this conversation. And I look forward to staying in touch with you and maybe being more involved in your organizations or you being involved with ours. So thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.